Support for the Dice Tower comes from listeners like you and from the Op, also known as USAopoly. Thanks for your support. The Dice Tower, episode 677.
Vasel is an idiot. Wait, what?
I didn't write that. Welcome to the Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, Suzanne joins me and Tom to talk about some recent game sessions. Geoff perhaps overanalyzes Hi-Ho Cherry-O, and we answer questions from the mailbag. Then we finish off the show by highlighting our top 10 exceptions to the infamous Vasel's Law. I'm Eric Summerer, and here is your host, the Phoenix Wright of board gaming, Tom Vasel.
Hey, I know what this one means, but I actually have never played this game.
I have not either. Suzanne, have you played the Phoenix Wright series?
I haven't. I just know the memes.
Yeah, I know, objection, and that's
that's all I know.
You two have been recording together for far too long to have that kind of synchronization.
Yeah, that's what makes us a great team, apparently.
Well, speaking of a great team, so a couple things here, folks. First of all, I didn't even know Eric was doing this, but we both were guests on the same podcast. 5 games.
Yeah, I was there first.
For Doomsday. Yes, you were. I'm harder to get. Folks, I'm not exaggerating when I say I think this is one of the best interview-style podcasts there is. It's really well done, and he asks questions that nobody else does.
Yes, and he gets very in-depth.
Yeah, it's really good. So you can hear about Eric's deep, dark secrets and the same old stuff you always hear from me, but you can check those out. Also, Dice Tower Now. That's our companion podcast that does the news. Recently, if you go check it out, Corey was talking about the role of board game graphic designers. They talked to the CEO of Poketo. They talked about how complexity in games has changed since the 80s and more, and the news, of course. And, I think that's all my bookkeeping stuff. I would like to give you an update on different conventions, but, you'll find that out eventually someday. You can check out our Kickstarter page. We got pictures of the promos. I don't know if you saw I think some of these were up earlier, but when you get a chance, Suzanne, you need to go look at a picture of yourself from the game Asking for Troubles.
Oh, no. What?
Suzanne's been added to Asking for Troubles?
Oh, it's not just her. It's all of us.
Really?
Yeah. You're an alien now.
Interesting.
So you'll have to check that out.
Oh, well, I'm intrigued.
And orange, apparently.
No. I think we're different. I don't remember now. I have to go look at the picture myself. But it has been one of the things I really like about 2020, and there are a couple.
Okay.
Is I like the fact that games seem to be spread throughout the year, as opposed to having a drop of Gen Con and a drop at Essen. And so I'm finding that we're starting to see Essen games even being released now. They don't have to be released that week.
Yeah.
And I think just as a general news coming out, it makes things a little less. Maybe some games don't get lost in the shuffle as much.
It's possible.
Do you feel like there's as many games coming out this year as in previous years?
Maybe. I think there is. It's hard to tell because the Kickstarter machine is so strong at this point. Like I think 2 or 3 Kickstarters are being shipped out every week now at this point.
Sure.
I'm not talking about the little dinky ones, but Kickstarters of some interest, like 30,000 or more that they've made on Kickstarter. Asmodee's, I've just recently got a list of all their stuff, and they're pumping things out. I think there was a 2-month pause, so maybe overall there will be a 1/6 drop in the course of the year, but I'm certainly not feeling it. There's games everywhere.
Hopefully we'll be able to find a couple of those those gems, diamonds in the rough that we may have missed if they were all coming out in the same week-long period?
Well, on that note, I'd like to talk about a small game that, sometimes a game catches my attention. Small games have a harder time of doing so. But This one here, Ohanami, this is just been released from Pandasaurus, but I'm guessing it came from someone else first because on Board Game Geek it says 2019. And there are a decent amount of ratings for it. So, and I know I just got the Pandasaurus one. So it must have come from another company first. But I played this with my family, and they wanted to play it over and over again. It has 120 cards in the deck. They're numbered from 1 to 120. The cards are different colors. They also have flowers and things on them, make them look nice. But they are green, blue, pink, and gray. And on and you play the game over, I think it's 3 rounds. Yeah, 3 rounds. And in each round, you get 10 cards randomly drawn from the deck, and you will draft 2 of those cards and then pass them on until you've drafted all 10 cards. Then you take 10 more cards, draft them, etc. When you draft the cards, you put them in front of you, each card into one of 3 columns in front of you. The only rule is when you put a card in a column, it has to be the highest or lowest number of that column. So if I put a 1 in one of my columns, I can never put a lower number than that. But I could go higher. If I put a 1 and a 120 in the same column, well, that's just bad playing. At the end of the first 10 cards, all the blue cards score everybody 3 points each. At the end of the second one, blue cards score 3 points again, and green cards score 4. And at the end of the third round, blue cards score 3 points again, green cards score 4, gray cards score 7, and pink cards score a big number of points depending on how many you have. That's it. I just like it. Now, if this sounds familiar, it's because the designer of this game also designed the game.
Aha.
And I mean that literally. It's called The Game, and also The Game. And he'd also designed The Game on Fire, The Game Extreme, The Game Face to Face, The Game Quick and Easy. Also, Quicks, if you've heard of that.
Yes. And 21.
He actually designed like 6 versions of Quicks. So he has this obsession with putting numbers in order, which is fine. And I don't dislike the game. I find it okay. But I think this, to me, feels like what I want the game to be. First of all, it's not cooperative. But secondly, it's just fun. You're just drafting cards. And at first, you draft them because you're like, well, I got to get the right numbers. If I have a 70, I'll draft the 71. That makes sense. But after a while, you're like, oh, I got to concentrate on what colors will I draft. It's not a heavy game. It's light and fun, and I just love it. I love drafting anyway. And so I think this may be my favorite game that he has designed. Stefan Bendorf. I know. Suzanne loves Quicks, but I like this one even better. I don't think they're really similar.
If I had to pick between Ohanami and Quicks, I would pick Ohanami every time. And Mandy and I have been... Well, I've been a fan of this game for a while because I imported it. It was originally published by NSV. And then with Pandasaurus finally picking it up, thank you, Pandasaurus. I'm so glad you did. Mandy got to play it, and we've played it together now, and she also really enjoyed it. It's just such a good game. Now, what was great is when we talked about the game in a previous episode, we actually had one of you all listeners out there email us about the French version, which I couldn't quite tell if this person's talking about the official French rules or if their group had just come up with a different variant. But basically, they have a different scoring variant where it's a point for each card in their largest garden, minus a point for each card in their smallest garden, minus points in their discard pile, and some other variable scoring. And I am so excited to try this variant too, because the basic mechanisms of Ohanami are so solid and the scoring is so intriguing. But the idea of this variant, the scoring notes that they sent, seems very, very solid too. So maybe even Ohanami has longer legs than we see in the box right now. It's that good.
The expert rules.
I think for me, the thing that there's a lot of these little card games that come out, and there's a lot of little card games I say, that's fun, cool, and I move on. This is one that I could see easily being added to my collection and played a lot, and that's rare for these smaller card games. So
all right.
that's
right.
Ohanami. Or
Cool.
Bendor for the win!
However Suzanne pronounces it is the correct way.
Maybe not.
So first up for me is a game that a lot of people have already had a chance to bring to the table, but I finally got my Kickstarter copy of Marvel United in the mail. This is the Command and Spin Master Games adventure cooperative with the Marvel characters, and the base box has I think 6 heroes and 3 not so heroes, bad guys, and a bunch of locations. You are cooperatively trying to defeat whoever this villain is. So, for example, Red Skull is going to continually increase the fear level of town, and as cards come out and effects trigger, that fear level is going to go up, and if it reaches 20, you lose. You also lose if certain decks run out, if you run out of cards in your own personal deck, or you run out of cards in the villain deck. But the basic mechanism of this game, you have one of your heroes, they have their own deck of cards, and there is this timeline of cards that work their way around the table. And you need actually a good amount of table space for Marvel United, because you have all these cards just sort of ringing their way around the table. The villain has their cards that are going to trigger bad things, where they trigger nasty effects on all of these locations. But then you have your cards, which have symbols on the bottom of them. There's an attack, there's a heroic symbol, there's a move symbol, and then there's a wild symbol. And you play one of your cards into this timeline. Not only do you get to do the 2 symbols that are on that card, but also the 2 symbols that are on the card previous to yours. So you sort of get this sense of teaming up. If I play a really cool card, the next player on my team is also going to get to use those symbols on that card. And then those somewhere between 2 to 4 symbols, you get to do all of those actions in whatever order you choose. You move around to different locations, you save bystanders, you knock out bad guys, and you trigger effects. Sometimes there's cool effects on the cards as well, and that's it. You draw a card, play a card, basically. Certain effects will trigger if you've knocked out a minion or something, then you can now go to that location and get some sort of extra bonus. And you're just trying to mitigate the threat levels and not have things overflow so that the villain gets too powerful and wins the game. What I was impressed with in Marvel United is how fast it played. The mechanics are very simple. You draw a card, play a card. When you take damage, you just take some of your cards and put them on the bottom of your deck. Eventually, that will cause you to run out of cards in your hand, which KOs you for a turn. But it's not really that nasty a thing. It's only really bad when you totally have run out of cards. All of your cards are in the center of the table, and at that point, you should have won anyway, so it's your own fault. But this lasted about 30 minutes, 45 minutes, maybe. It set up very quickly, it played very quickly, and it was easy to understand. I think this is a perfect family weight game. I think you might be disappointed if you are maybe a more advanced adult gamer who is looking for something a little more in-depth. But this is pretty solid for families, and I am very excited to see more figurines coming in the future. The kids were a little disappointed that their favorites like Spider-Man and Rocket and Star-Lord weren't in the base box, but they're on their way at some point in the future. So far, so good with Marvel United.
This is one of the few times, usually when I get a game with the mega extra stuff coming, I don't care about all that mega extra stuff. Let me just play the game for a while.
Yeah.
I enjoy Marvel United, but I'm ready for that extra stuff, mostly for the new villains.
Yeah, there's only 3 in the base box.
Right, and that's fine. Don't get me wrong. I think the base box is a good value, but I'm just pumped about that extra stuff. Although like all Kickstarters, I kind of just wash it out of my head until it comes at some point.
It'll be like a huge gift surprise when it shows up.
Ugh, I'm so envious. I couldn't back it at the time, and so I haven't had any shot to try it, but it looked so fun to me in the Kickstarter, and everybody, and even you, Eric, you are talking it up now, and
even me. I don't talk
Envy
anything
Monster
up.
has me.
It's probably just hype.
Yeah, it's all hype.
Well, no minis and no big named IP, licensed IP on this one. But I've been playing a lot of solo games as we've been in quarantine, and it's harder to get with my regular gaming group and play games. But I've always enjoyed solo gaming. So this has just given me a chance to reinvest some of my time into it. And I've been going through some wallet games. Last episode, I talked about a couple of wallet games. And this episode, I'm talking about another wallet game, Hierarchy. Designed by Hugo Kawamata, and the art is by Daniel Ito. And this is a two-player game where you can compete against each other, but it also has a very nice solo variant that I've been playing. And so that's kind of what I'm going to be focusing on. But basically, you've got 18 cards, and they're double-sided. They're all characters. So you'll have the assassin or the knight or the king or the queen, and it's the same on either side. It's just one side of the card is purple and one side of the card is gold. And ultimately, in the competitive game, you each get some cards, and you're trying to play cards down a line and ultimately be the last person to play, get the highest up the hierarchy by playing these cards in ascending order. They don't have to be perfectly sequential, but you want to always play them ascending, typically, and following the special rules that are on any given character's card. The way the solo variant works is that you swap out some cards. They give you some solo-specific cards, and then you divide it out into two little pyramids of cards, and you just have to, one purple, one gold, and you just have to alternate between them and manipulate the cards yourself. And ultimately, you want to play out all the cards if you're able to. It's very, very simple. There's not a lot of setup, which I really like for a lot of solo games when you just want to toss one down and play quickly. And I like this one. I like this one a fair amount because you're going to hope that you have a low card, and you can start with the assassin or the serf or the tower or whatever. But then you might get the dragon. Well, the dragon is a 9, but the knight is a 6. Typically, you can't play a 6 on a 9. But, of course, the knight has a special ability that you can play it on the dragon because the knight would slay the dragon. Mm-hmm. The queen can only be played if the baroness is already in line. There are rules about you can only play this character if there's fewer than 7 cards, or you can only play this character if there's more than 8 cards in the line already. Those kinds of special abilities on the cards, along with their value, are what you're using to manipulate the line. And it's a really interesting little puzzle because you get a random shuffle every time. You can trade cards between piles sometimes, all that kind of thing. So very, very simple, very, very quick to set up. But you're definitely planning. You're definitely scanning your sets and trying to figure out the most efficient way that you can try to move up this hierarchy and get all of your cards played. So I very, very much have enjoyed my plays of Hierarchy solo. How much leg does this have for me on an ongoing basis? Because some of the button shy games, I play a ton. Sprawlopolis, Circle the Wagons.
Sprawlopolis.
Those are games that I personally play a fair amount, and I'm not tired of them, and I'm looking forward to more, and they feel fairly fresh to me every time. Hierarchy, I really enjoy. I think I could possibly play it out if I were to play it a ton, because you're going to get into some rhythms. But again, this is an 18-card, very affordable, $12 game. Am I going to get my money's worth out of it? Absolutely. I'm going to get plenty of solo plays and do the dueling play as well. So between those two factors, the affordability, the portability, I really like Hierarchy. It's another solid game in the Button Shy wallet line.
I'm having really mixed success with my button line stuff. I was so enamored with Sprawlopolis that I bought several more, and some are good, some are eh. This one, I like how it looks, except I don't like the color palette. There's only 2 colors.
Right, but it's very obvious which cards you're dealing with at any given time, and so there is some value in seeing at a quick glance who's in control of the board and which cards are in play that way.
Yeah. Okay.
And the art style is I think if you're looking at the art itself, beyond the colors, the line art and things like that, I think it's pretty sharp.
Oh, no, the art's fine. That's a lot of purple, yellow. But
It is. Well, I went to the University of Washington, and our school colors are purple and gold, so maybe that's partly why I found it appealing.
Oh, I see. All right.
All righty, so we started strong let's drop down a bit here.
Ooh.
So let's talk about Inhuman Conditions. I don't know if you guys have heard of this game.
No.
This was kickstarted a long time ago, and it was sent to me. It is a 2-player game that is inspired by Blade Runner, in which one person is interviewing another person, trying to determine if that person is a robot or not.
Okay.
So one person...
Hey, that sounds cool.
It does. It does. Okay, so first of all, the game has so much production in it that it takes so much time to set up and hand everything out, because you pick one of, I think, 18 different categories, and then each category has a selection of robot and human cards, and you shuffle those and hand one out. And it's just they could have definitely have shrunk the game down by 75%. But anyway, so you get a card. So one person's the interrogator, the other person gets a card, and it will tell you whether you are a human, a passive robot, or an active robot, or a murderous robot, or something like that.
Oh.
If you're the human, that's fine. They're going to ask you a bunch of questions. You need to answer, and they need to stamp your thing. I mean, literally, you have a little sheet that you fill out with your name and all that stuff, and then they will stamp it. It comes with 2 stamps. They'll stamp it human or robot. If they stamp it robot, you both lose. If they stamp it human, you both win. Hooray. If you're a robot, if you're a passive robot, you have some sort of weird rule you have to follow. It might say, you can't ever start a sentence with a preposition or whatever the rules are. Some stuff like that. You can't mention an actual proper name at all. And if you do break the rule, you have to do something funky to kind of fix it. So the passive robot just has to survive the end of the round and has to have the human player stamp him as a human, and then they win. So they're just trying to trick the other person. The murderous robot has a 3 things they need to do, some sort of thing that they need to get into the conversation somehow. And then once they've done the 3rd one, they have to wait, I don't know, I think 30 seconds or something like that. And then they slam their hand on the table and they say something effective, I just killed you and I win.
Okay.
Okay, well, this all sounds fascinating, but the game has a pretty huge flaw. And the fact is that if the person being interviewed is a human, that person is bored. Because you answer the questions honestly. They ask you questions, you just answer. I mean, you make stuff up. You can make up a backstory and whatever. So there's some fun role playing. And me and Mike actually played this on a live stream on the Dice Tower, and we role played it up. It's fun, It's like something that would be entertaining for people to watch. Well, maybe not us, but it's like But the human player has no stress. Like, oh, are you going to call me a human? You better. I've been pretty obviously a human. If you're a robot, that's more stressful. That's more fun. But you can't know you're a robot. To have a fun robot game, you have to play an unfun human game. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If you're hiding yourself, that's where the tension is. You're trying to pretend you're a human, and they're trying. But if you know they're a robot, then there's no stress. So you have to wonder if they're a human, and because of that, half the games aren't interesting, in my opinion. Now, I think if this was a multiplayer game, it'd be more interesting. If you're interviewing 2 or 3 people and you know one of them's a robot, at that point, it's interesting. And so it's a big production. The box looks like a baseball card box from back in the day. It's a big brick. It has nice components, but like I said, there's just too many components, and it's cute that it has stamps in it. But
what about when the ink pads dry out?
I don't know. They're self-inking stamps. They're the kind that ink themselves.
Okay. That's
those
good.
still dry out. Actually, if you're the murderous robot, I remember that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to take the stamp and just stamp robot all over the paper. You're like, ah.
Okay, that's better.
So that's funny, right? And again, it's interesting, but that's my problem with the game. Now, it's 5 minutes for 2 players. It's an interesting idea. And if I was a speech teacher, this seems like a fun game to teach people to play. Because it's a social deduction game for 2 people. I'm just saying that it's problematic that if they're both humans, well, one's always a human, but
Right.
if the person being interviewed is a human, I found that to be less interesting. So that's Inhuman Conditions.
Do you think it would be better if if you were a human, that you had some sort of extra goal you had to complete? And, you had to work something into the conversation, or you had to, if it was more than just convincing the interviewer that you were human, if you had some sort of goal that you had to complete in order to win as a human, that there was an actual challenge there, would that be better?
Yes, I think that would help a lot.
All right, so next for me is following up on something that, Suzanne, you recommended just a few weeks ago when I was last with you and Mandy on the show. You recommended during the app segment, Finished. Freedom and Freeze's game is now available in app form, and it's free to try out. You can download it for free, and then you can remove ads by paying them if you like it. So it's sort of a try before you buy sort of situation. Finished is a solo game where you're trying to put a certain number of cards in order, 48 cards in order. They're randomly shuffled at the beginning, and you will use powers and use candy to trigger the powers on cards to basically shuffle them around and move them into different corners of the table and just sort of try and get them all in order so that by the time you go through the deck, I think it's 8 times, you have put all of the cards into the score pile and won the game. There's a scoring system in the app, which I don't really understand. It doesn't quite make sense. The one thing that I do sort of like is that after you've lost, which I have done a lot, they give you a tutorial, which explains the game very well. But I think it's stacked so that you actually have a chance at winning. And I won that. I won the tutorial, no trouble. But as soon as I started playing the game for real, I have yet to win. But it lets you complete the shuffle. So it's like, we know you lost, but you can keep playing so you get the satisfaction of actually finishing the game and getting all the cards into the score pile. So even if it takes you like another 3 or 4 times through the deck, it still says, you won! You cheated, but you won! Which is kind of nice. The thing that's a little odd is and this is how they've monetized the game, not only are there's some ads that will show up when you complete a game and at the bottom of the screen, they have undos. There is an undo button that you can push a certain number of times, and then you can watch an ad in order to get more of those. They give you a lot, but that's how they're going to try and get you to pay more money. But the undo button is almost a superpower in this game, because sometimes you will reveal new information. I guess you could if you've memorized the order of the cards in the deck so far. It's not really new information, but the way the game is structured, you don't have that much in front of you. They try and discourage you from being able to look through the deck. They cycle cards back to the bottom of the deck all the time, so you can't really peruse the order of cards. You have to try and remember particular clusters of cards if you know that a particular sequence is coming up. But they don't make it easy for you to do that. So there's this undo button. So if I trigger something or shuffle cards and I'm like, oh no, I had intended to do something else, I can hit this undo button and it will reverse the action and put those cards back on the deck and do all this, which for a card game like this seems almost overpowered. Like, I feel like I'm cheating to be doing that. And I almost wish that the undo button weren't there. But I guess I can just not push it.
Right.
Overall,
but we know you will.
I know, and I still do. I still haven't won, even pushing the stupid button. Overall, it is a good app. It's not a wonderful app. It's not quite as polished, and I think, Suzanne, you talked about this when we talked about it before. But it's the art design from the physical card game, and it is quite addictive. I have played it many times, and I think I will continue to do so. I have not yet purchased the remove ads option, but I'm probably going to, because it's pretty fun. Finished in app form. I like it.
Eric, you're not alone. I haven't won it either. I can't win this game.
It's
I keep
hard.
trying, though.
I've won the physical game, but I have not. Yeah.
Unless one of the two of you beat it, I'll never play it. So it's on you for me to buy it. Unless you beat it, I'm not getting it.
But it's free.
I won't download it for free unless you beat it.
I have a mission.
Okay.
I'm not going to listen to anything Tom says for the rest of the show. I'm going to be playing Finished.
Wait, is this...
I've managed to beat Friday, I've got a rhythm for Friday, but I can't do finished.
Is this the same one that's being published right now, though?
Yeah.
Oh no,
you mean the card game?
No, they have a new one coming out this year. I thought it was called Finish. It must be called something else.
Oh, a new Freedom and
Finish
Free
has been
solo
out.
game? No.
Yeah. Oh, Final something, I think it's called. I don't know. It starts with an F, but that doesn't narrow it down.
Yeah, shocking.
It does get confusing.
All right, to wrap up, I will talk about another game that I've been playing solo, which I think it actually started off as a solo game and then expanded beyond that. But Micro City, the second edition. And I think Micro City, the original edition, was solo only. And now in the second edition, they've offered some two-player options. But I have been tackling this little one solo. It comes in a nice little compact box. It's got what I think is a really cool looking graphic design approach and kind of general look and color palette and things like that. And basically you're just trying to build your little city or build a tall building in this little city. You've got cards that are split into 4 little regions or areas on each card. And you just create a little random board from 4 of those cards and just put them into a little square. You've got a meeple that represents your builder that's going to be moving around those different regions on the cards. And you're going to be able to get actions in that region based on what it is. You're going to be able to get gold, or you're going to be able to contribute to that building that you're trying to complete and things like that. Because you've got this other card that's got the building represented. And basically you've got little resources that you have to contribute to each level from the bottom to the top. And if you manage to do that in a certain number of rounds, huzzah, you've won. And if you don't manage to do that in the set number of rounds, or if you run out of what they call influence tokens, you've lost. Bum, bum, bum. So it's primarily a dice and action-driven game. You've got 2 little dice. You're going to roll them. They're just 6-siders, and then you'll get to decide what to do with them because you've got 6 action cards as well, and those actions are going to give you a couple of things. One, they're going to determine the movement of your little builder around the little board that you've created, and they're going to let you get money or get resources or take actions. Now, if you match a die to a card, then you can get the advanced action. And it actually also works that way on the board as well. When your builder moves around, you can take the action that the builder's on, or if you match the die to the die value on that square, then you can get the advanced action. So you're just going through a certain number of rounds. I think it's like 13 rounds for the middle game, which is what I've been playing. Collecting resources, moving your builder around, and trying to complete this building. There's some other stuff going on as well, but in general, I have really enjoyed this game. There's an interesting variability in how the board gets set up since it's these double-sided cards and they're random and you never quite have the same layout. I like that the way that the action cards work by putting the movement on the action card, it really creates a nice little decision point because sometimes you need the 2 movement, but you don't need the action on the 2 movement card kind of situation. And I like that decision point that you have to make. You can use your resources to adjust your dice, but sometimes you need those resources for other purposes, that kind of thing. So in a very small, compact, simple game, you've got a nice little challenge in trying to gather resources and complete your building. And I've really enjoyed this one. So that is Micro City 2nd Edition. I have not played it multiplayer. I've only been playing it solo. But it's been a real winner for me.
That's a bunch of small games that we talked about today.
Marvel United.
I mean, that's
Well,
bigger.
It's small compared to what it will be.
Yeah, it's small for now. It'll get bigger. You know what the best way to play kids' games is, Tom?
With
With
kids.
a spreadsheet.
Oh, really?
Geoff is going to explain why.
2, 1, go.
It's time for Game Tech with Geoff Engelstein, where we find out how games really work.
Today I'd like to talk about the game Hi-Ho Cherry-O. Released in 1960, it currently stands at a sparkling 3.6 rating on BoardGameGeek, which just shows that the lack of refinement exists in so many gamers. Now, for those who are unfamiliar, Hi-Ho Cherry-O is a game designed for young children. Play is simple. Each player has 10 cherries on a tree, and they're trying to move them into their basket. On their turn, a player spins a spinner, which has 7 possible results. Move 1 cherry from your tree to your basket, move 2 cherries from your tree to your basket, move 3 cherries from tree to basket, move 4 cherries from tree to basket, or move 2 cherries from basket back to the tree. There's actually 2 of those spaces. And the dreaded, move all your cherries from your basket back to the tree. Now, like Candyland, there are no decisions. You spin the spinner and do what it says, and stop when someone has at least 10 cherries in their basket. The game is great to teach kids the general principles of games, taking turns, dealing with winning and losing gracefully, and so on. So, how many turns should a game last? The shortest would be 3 turns, but theoretically the game could never end. What's the average length? Now, as a designer, this is an important question, particularly when dealing with the shorter attention spans of children. One way to figure this out, of course, would be simply to play a bunch of times and track the number of turns, or just kind of see how it feels and whether it should be longer or shorter. However, math can save you a bit of heartache. This type of system can be beautifully modeled by what is called a finite state machine. A finite state machine, as its name implies, has a series of states, and not an infinite number. It needs to have a fixed amount. Now, in a game, a state would represent the way that resources are distributed and the phase of the game. In Hi-Ho Cherry-O, there are 11 possible states for each player, having 10 cherries to having 0 cherries. In software systems, finite state machines are frequently used to model how a user interacts with a program or the different modes that something can be in. Now, in addition to states, a finite state machine has rules describing how you move between the states. These are called transitions, and is usually visualized with a diagram where the states are circles and the transitions are arrows between them. Now, in Hi-Ho Cherry-O, each of the spinner positions transitions you to a new state. For example, if you have 7 cherries in your basket, you could transition to 8, 9, or 10 cherries if you gain, or to 5 cherries or 0 cherries if you lose some. Now, some transitions between states are results of player choices, but in the case of Hi-Ho Cherry-O, we know the exact probabilities of moving between those states. For example, there are 2 out of 7 spinner spots that move you from 0 to 10 cherries, so the probability is 2 sevenths. Now, a finite state machine that has definite probabilities of how you move between the states has a special name. It is called a Markov chain, after the Russian mathematician Andrei Markov, who first studied them in 1906. The cool part about Markov chains is that they are easy to analyze to determine the behavior of the entire system. Now, Reddit user Stats Jedi did an analysis of the Markov chain for Hi-Ho Cherry-O and found out a bunch of interesting things. First, the average games for a 2-player game is there's a 50% chance that the game will end within 8 rounds. Also, you found that the state where you have 0 cherries in your basket is the most probable state you will find yourself in. This type of state is called an attractor, by the way, when your system wants to find its way there. Other than the winning state, having 3 cherries in your basket is the least likely state. Now, the games that are able to be fully analyzed by Markov chains are typically not that interesting for most gamers. In addition to Hi-Ho Cherry-O, Chutes and Ladders and LCR can also basically be modeled as Markov chains. However, while full games typically are impractical to model or impossible because of the decision-making that players do, subsystems of game designs can be. For example, in Philippe Cayart's game Evo, there is a climate track, and on each turn you roll a die, and depending on the result, it gets hotter, colder, or remains the same. A savvy designer could create a Markov chain of this system to tweak all the values and get the behavior that they want. Now, if you're interested in using Markov chains to model a subsystem of your game, there are a number of online tutorials showing you how to use Excel or other spreadsheet programs to do this, or you can jump in the deep end and use a statistical package like R. But even if you don't go that far, look for these types of subsystems in the games you design and play. It may reveal to you some of the design intent, or perhaps give you different strategies to explore. This is Geoff Engelstein with Game Tech.
Support for this episode comes from The Op, featuring Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle Charms and Potions. A new adventure is brewing. Continue your magical journey in the wizarding world with Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle, the Charms and Potions expansion. This much-anticipated second expansion to Hogwarts Battle increases the player count to 5 heroes, including the newest playable character, Ginny Weasley. Enhance your experience with charm abilities to aid you as you battle new villains and encounter even more challenges. Trouble is brewing. Only by working together will you be able to protect the wizarding world from he who must not be named. Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle, a cooperative deck-building game, is required to play this expansion. The Charms and Potions expansion releases in October and is available for pre-order now. Questions.
All right, questions. Ooh, Mandy and I haven't done questions in a while on our episodes, so I'm excited. Thanks for letting me. I'm super excited about this. Let's see what people.
Oh, well, you missed the whole question episode. That's
right.
Me and Mandy.
Yep.
Yeah, Mandy. Mandy got to do that. Darn it. You play favorites. But actually, I'm super excited about telling you that you are wrong 10 times. So that's a bonus for this episode. Anyway, questions. Hey, do you think Justin writes in and says, do you think increased sales of digital games may eventually influence the physical versions? Maybe just in design, where the designer's considering both while creating the game, but also in physical quality. For instance, if the game can make X dollars now, but if you add in digital sales, it can make more money overall, the physical game could have higher quality parts because the game generates more money even if they sold the same amount of physical copies.
You know, this made me realize I don't know how much designers make from digital games. Like, I've talked with designers before off books, you know, like, so how much money did you get from this game or whatever, just curious. I have never talked to anyone about digital games. I don't know how much they bring in. They're usually really cheap.
Well, I've done a fair amount of legwork on that front, and it really is in some ways just like the physical game world because it's highly dependent. We have a lot of really great board game apps out there that didn't make the developers any money. And that's the development shop. The reality is most of the digital versions out there are commissioned by publishers or in a licensing agreement between the publisher and the developer, the app developer, and the designer isn't inherently part of that deal. So unless the designer wrote it into their contract with the publisher about residuals from an app version, the designer themselves might not get any money or royalty from a digital version. So from a how does it influence a designer to make choices? Probably not much.
Huh.
Yeah.
That sort of reminds me of like early days of video streaming, where actors and production companies didn't have a particular clause in their contract that talked about whether they'd get paid if a movie went to streaming, and that sort of became a wasteland, open season on who had the rights to do this sort of thing for a while.
Yeah.
It's an interesting concept that Justin brings up, though. Would a publisher factor in possible sales of a digital version in order to boost the quality of the physical game? And it seems I seem to be having trouble with that. Like being able to count on that amount of money. You know, what if the development of the app doesn't come through? Often that's something that a publisher would not have direct control over. That's something that gets farmed out to a digital developer. And if for some reason that developer isn't able to produce the product on time, suddenly that money that the physical publisher was counting on doesn't materialize, and now you're out the extra components that you were planning on. I'm not sure it works out monetarily that way.
I'm pretty confident the math isn't assured enough to have that impact.
Right.
Martin says, greetings from the heart of Europe. Was listening to Tom, Mandy, and Suzanne discussing dessert games, and I thought about pairing a game with a special snack or drink or music to create a specific atmosphere. I really like playing Escape the Dark Castle by Candlelight, listening to the soundtrack they made for the game, or accompany Brass Birmingham by soundtrack from Peaky Blinders and a nice glass of ale. Do you have some games you enjoy with some special setting?
Well, I recommend if you're playing D-Mocker, do Key Lime Pie. And if you're playing Hero Escape,
Key Lime Pie.
Key Lime Pie. I'm just going to go through the whole list here.
I'm so here for this content. Keep going. Keep going.
It's like, nah. Can you imagine just like a reading? Shadows over Camelot, Key Lime Pie. The other day, I've never done a food because of a game. Although I distinctly remember when I was in college, my friend Samuel Healy invited me over very excitedly to play Star Wars CCG. So we did, and he made blue milk.
Oh, boy.
Sam made blue milk? Wow.
He did, and he was like, this is so thematic. And I was thinking, I don't want to drink it, I'm not even a big milk fan, and it's blue. I know it's just blue food coloring. But I do music. Like the other day we played Dinogenics, and I was like, we got to listen to Jurassic Park. So we did. It's just thematic.
Okay.
We've played the donut theme game. There was the drive-through donut game, and we were playing that, and we thought, gosh, we got to go get donuts. And so we actually stopped in the middle of the game to go to the local donut shop and pick up a dozen donuts and come back and finish the game.
Oh, wow.
I've never been more proud.
Yeah,
influence
this is
right
why
there.
we connect, Tom.
So there was one time we played Run for Your Life Candyman, the parody of Chutes and Ladders from Smirk and Dagger. And instead of the basic game comes with writing sheets. You simply cross off different sections of the gingerbread men. But we made actual gingerbread men. And Damage, we had like little icing pipers, little bags, and we would cross off the boxes on the actual cookie, and then when we lost a piece, we'd break it off and eat it. And that was a fun way to play that game because you got food.
All right, Eric wins.
Our next question is from Dan. He says, there's no official definition for a skirmish game.
There isn't?
I have my own definition, but I'm just curious, how would you describe it? Well, there's probably one written somewhere.
I actually Googled it, and yeah, Wikipedia has a definition for skirmish game. The primary difference is that the pieces that you're moving are an individual, one person or one unit, whereas other wider scale games will be like an entire squad that you're moving around the board. So if you have a piece that represents one person, that's a skirmish game.
Now, this is an interesting concept, actually, because I like skirmish games usually better because I like controlling the little people who run around. And I'm a big fan of skirmish games, but they feel a little hairier when I'm playing a historical skirmish game.
Okay.
I don't know how to explain it, because if Jim Jones gets shot and killed in a war game, that's actual history. It's not a nameless person anymore.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't care. Like if I'm using aliens or whatever, that's fine. Not a big deal. It just, I know that some people don't play war games because of they might know someone who was in a war, what have you. A skirmish game definitely makes that more personal.
Yes. Yeah, it's more visceral.
That was an easy question. Eric, you use Wikipedia. We're done.
Research.
All right, Mark writes in with a pretty lengthy question, I think for you, Tom, likely, about Arkham Horror versus the adventure games. So Mark says that they've been playing Arkham Horror, the card game, with their wife and really enjoy it. And they've also played the adventure games, the dungeon, and thought it was okay. They do similar things, and they hear you praise the adventure games a lot, but clearly Arkham Horror is a superior design. Oh. So how do the adventure games work so well for you but the Arkham Horror card game doesn't.
Well, there's only 2 of the adventure games. I'm not a big fan of horror to begin with. I agree that the adventure, and he specifically talked about dungeon, he said generic fantasy is overused. I agree, although I was more enamored by the actual what was going on in adventure games dungeon. I didn't care that it was generic fantasy because it was just solving some puzzles and things and figuring out how to do it. And I thought the story was fun. I thought the gameplay was fun. He says there was typos in the reading, maybe. He said the app was awful. Maybe. I don't know. But I played it with my kids. That's the thing. And we had such an amazing experience. So it's a one-time thing. I can't go back and play it again to see if I'm wrong on it or not.
I don't think you usually go back and play an individual scenario in Arkham Horror, the card game, though. Usually you work your way through that. There are some surprises there as well. You don't really go back and replay a scenario.
I'm just done with the Arkham theme. I get it. Everyone likes Cthulhu. It's fine. That's actually, I've heard that the new show on HBO,
Lovecraft Country,
is really good. Right. I heard it's really good. And I'm like, I'm just so tired of Cthulhu. Now, granted, this is like the first time Cthulhu's really been done well, I guess, on the small screen. But I'm just not a big horror fan. I like superheroes and fantasy. That's basically what it is for me. Eric, you played it, right?
So I think it's a total shift in scope. These are very different products. They're both sort of card-based adventures, cooperative, but the adventure games is far more limited. And one of the things that Mark was talking about not enjoying, how there didn't seem to be many options, it's much more about exploration in the adventure games and sort of working your way through a story and discovering how to combine items together. And there's not as much of a failure option in the adventure games. It's more how long it's going to take you to get through it. Whereas in the Arkham Horror card game, there is a lot less inevitability in a success. There's a whole system of whether something succeeds or not, drawing tokens from a bag. It's actually very difficult to get things done in the Arkham Horror card game. And maybe Mark really likes that and likes that uncertainty and having to battle and wrestle against the system, but I don't want to do all of this stuff and then pull a token that says -3 that then is going to cause me to fail a particular check. That's not the kind of thing I'm excited about. I like having figured out a puzzle and combining these items together and reading an entry and go, oh, that's exactly what we needed to do. I knew that's how you solved that puzzle. And that's the sort of thing that I'm excited about. So I would also lean toward the adventure games versus the Arkham Horror LCG. But they're very different products.
Oh, I'm reading this next question.
Oh, okay.
So Sean says, while attending a con, I was having an amazing time and the most wonderful time of my life before I joined
That's
a
not
group
what it says.
being taught
That's
how
not
to
what
play.
it says.
Well, I'm just giving some flavor.
You're adding to the text.
All right, fine. It says, while attending a con, I joined a group being taught how to play Food Chain Magnate by some guy named Eric Summerer. So the group was large enough to be split into 2 games. Mr. Summer was being assisted by someone who apparently played the game on a very regular basis. I was placed in his group. He played the game with us, and within 15 minutes had more money than the rest of the table combined. For the following 2 hours of play, we half-heartedly trudged through while pestering Mr. Summer with very stupid non-board game questions out of boredom. This was several years ago, and I've had no desire to play the game since and have also left the hobby.
Oh, he doesn't say that. You added that.
Oh, fine. He did say it where he hasn't wanted to play the game since. He says, my question for you. Well, before we get to his question, do you remember this, Eric?
I do. I do remember some very high intensity teaching sessions of Food Chain Magnate. It was the year that it came out, and it was either 1 or 2 times that I had to teach 2 tables at once. And while I'm not sure exactly all of the things that happened in this particular table. I do remember standing there between two tables trying to keep it straight.
All right. But his question is, when teaching a game to group for the first time that favors experienced players, do you hold back or just go for the victory? And if someone at a table you are teaching a game like this to announces they play the game all the time, do you take any action or warn the other players of what they may be in for?
So I feel a little attacked. But
Well, you weren't in that game, though. He's
No.
not saying you did this.
no, I mean, so with very few exceptions, I do hold back when I am the teacher of the game because it's much more about making sure everyone understands it and not whether I win. But this is a little trickier in a situation, and especially in a situation of Food Chain Magnate, which is a very complex game of systems. It's a game that you need to sort of understand how one action is going to cascade. And even when you do understand that, what the other players do is also going to affect what you just did and how well that plays out for you. And so it is a game you sort of have to wrestle with for a while. I don't know what I would have said to the table, knowing that there was one experienced player at the table, to warn them in any way, just to say, watch out, because he's going to do what? He has one of 6 different levers he could pull that can mess with you, and I can't warn you about all of them. It was much more, especially with trying to wrestle with the rules of Food Chain, teaching it at a convention, much more about just making sure everybody understood what was going on, and knowing that when they did X, that was going to cause Y to happen. It was not about making the rest of the table competitive with an experienced player. That just wasn't going to happen, especially with Food Chain Magnate.
Yeah, I don't like going hard during a teach. I've heard far too many stories about a game essentially being emotionally ruined for people when a teacher has gone in hard and taken advantage, or just gotten caught up in the moment and ended up following a dominant strategy and using their knowledge and expertise to bowl over all the other new players, and it just wasn't fun. At best, if I'm teaching and I know that there's a dominant strategy or there's an important thing that if you don't do it, you're going to be in trouble, I always try to make sure to point that out. And just being aware of the table and being aware of the players and their energy and how they're reacting to things happening in the table. I don't view my job as a teacher to show them how to lose the game.
Yeah.
Right? I want them to learn how to play the game and hopefully enjoy it enough. Because if I'm teaching it, it's a game I enjoy. So my goal is to ensure the other players learn how to play the game and hopefully learn to enjoy it too.
Yeah, so as an aside, I also will no longer play Food Chain Magnate due to this exact same situation happening to me. But
Wait, Tom, did you write that question, Tom? Was it you?
Is this really you?
no, I'll be clear. Mine was I was in a really weird mood one night at the game store, and I was like, I've been saying I'll play Food Chain Magnate. I'll do it right now. If you, and I was talking to one of the guys at the store who loved the game. If you teach it to me, I'll play it. And Jason said, I love it too. And between the two of them, if you add their scores together, it was like, I don't know, 80 times my score. I very rarely want to quit in the middle of a game, but I really did in that one. Because it just, after a point, I was like, not only can I not win, I can't even have fun.
Yeah.
I can't even do anything.
Yeah.
Any move I make, you just slap me down. And there's a lot of games I get murdered in, but I build my own little engine. And I'm like, well, I'm losing, but at least I did this over here. Not in Food Chain Magnate. Anyhow, when I play a game with people, yeah, of course, I'll try some weird strategy. So, like, I'm pretty decent at Le Havre, so I'll try some new strategies when I teach it to people. If I'm playing with somebody who's really good, I just warn them and say ahead of time, look, we're playing with Jason, and he's going to probably win, but don't worry about his score. Just compare your scores to everyone else. We'll go play for second. And that usually helps.
Okay.
I don't think many games are like Food Chain Magnate. I think it's an outlier. Because I think a lot of games, even if you get destroyed in them, again, you can still have something you've done that felt productive. Especially engine-building games.
Yeah.
Well, that's our questions. Let's jump to the top 10.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10!
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is brought to you by The Op, also known as USAopoly, at theop.games.
All right, folks, today we're talking about exceptions to Vasel's Law. Now, this, again, I want to be careful. I want to start off here. It just got called this. I don't mean to be pretentious about this.
It got called this by you.
Often and repetitively.
Yeah, all the time.
No, I know, but what happened was someone said, is there a Vasel Law? And I said, I guess. So I said, any great game will eventually be reprinted. And, of course, then people made, all kinds of exceptions to this rule. However, I'll say this. I'm very proud of this. I feel like this is a very good thing. What the goal of this law is to say, hey, if there's this game that you think's amazing, you don't, 99 times out of 100, you don't need to go spend expensive amounts of money on eBay to get it. It will eventually come back in print. And the reason I know this is true is because someone made a Board Game Geek list to prove my rule long. I think this was like 4 or 5, maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of games on that list had to be removed because they were reprinted in that time slot.
Yes.
And in fact, the People's Choice today, one of the games in that list was announced this week.
Oh, boy. Oh, actually, I think I know what you're talking about.
Right. So that's a thing. However, there are exceptions. The biggest one, of course, is intellectual property. But there may be other exceptions, and we'll probably discuss the reasons why.
Sure.
Or do people just my standard response is not a great game. If no one's reprinting it, there's a reason why. Mm-hmm. That's my general thing. But hopefully, well, that's enough of, I guess, backtracking. Let's go. Beat me up. Go ahead, Eric.
Number 10.
My number 10 is sort of a parallel universe sync up with Tom. I chose Lowenherz, the game of building your territory, building walls, and negotiating for the ability to do those things on this grid map, expanding your territory and stuff. It would be nice to see that come back. Lowenherz is my number 10.
For me, my number 10 is Strasbourg. A Feld game. Now, Queen is going through this massive Kickstarter to revive a number of games, including a different version of Macau, which is a game that would have otherwise been on my list this round. But
you think this one's going to come up from them?
So I checked the list, and I don't think any of these new ones are like an updated Strasbourg, which is a shame because I think Strasbourg is an underappreciated Feld. It is an exception game for me. I don't love most auction games, and I don't love most area control games. But here you have a Feld auction area control game, and everything just clicks. It lets you be really strategic. You can look at it from the first hand of cards that you have and the first layout and really plan what you want to do. And I just love it. So Strasbourg, it needs some more modern board game love.
Well, my number 10 is a match over with Eric. He said Lowenherz / Domain, but there's no reason ever to play Lowenherz since Domain is the vastly superior game. Domain is owned by Mayfair. Mayfair was recently bought, not recently, but a few years ago, was bought by Asmodee, who immediately dissolved the company. Mm-hmm. The original Domain, and by the way, this is from Klaus Teuber, who did Catan, was published by Cosmos. So I wonder if we'll see this one come back, because they brought some games I would like. They brought back the War of the Roses two-player game, and I never expected to see that one come back.
Yeah, the Rose King.
The Rose King, right. So this one's an excellent game. So I'm just holding out hope that maybe there's some future possibilities.
I'd be willing to accept Domain as a compromise.
I'm telling you, most folks would probably prefer Domain. It's already kind of a mean game. Lowenherz is really mean.
Yes, yeah. So Domain softens the edges a little bit.
So my number 10, Domain.
Number 9.
Number 9 is a children's family game called Chateau Roquefort. You play all these mice that are running around on a roof. You're trying to acquire cheese, but there are like these sliding tiles that shift the landscape wherever you are, and you can accidentally fall down a hole and sort of fall into the board. It's played in the box, so there's this plastic structure, the insert that then has these holes, and then the tiles sit on top of that, and things shift around. I think expense is probably a big part of why this hasn't seen a resurgence, but it is a very unique children's game, and one that I'm glad we've hung on to. Chateau Roquefort, number 9.
Oh, that sounds adorable. My number 9, we'll see. I think this one might actually fall under the Vasel law, but right now it isn't. I was going to put Russian railroads here, but after I found out...
Oh, I like Russian.
Right? Or German railroads or American railroads, any of the three. That was going to be my number 9. But after I found out that Carcassonne, the city, is out of print, I had to put it on my list instead because that is my favorite version of Carcassonne. It is the best version of Carcassonne, and it is a crime, I say, that it is not on shelves for people to buy and play today.
Yeah, I don't know. So, again, this is another one where the Carcassonne license went to Z-Man, which was then bought by Plan B game. Not Plan B. They were F2Z games. And then that got sold to Asmodee. So I don't know which of all the many, many, many Carcassonne games are going to be reprinted, if that makes sense. I don't know. But yes, if anyone should be reprinted, it should be Carcassonne the City because it's amazing.
Didn't they just announce Hunters and Gatherers was coming back?
Yeah, I saw that.
Oh, who cares?
Yeah, I mean...
Carcassonne the City. Hunters and Gatherers is one of those versions, I think, that hasn't aged as well because I think it's like if I did all my top 10 Carcassonne, I don't even think it would make it.
I'm simply saying that if they've gotten to Hunters and Gatherers and are working forward, then the City should be coming up soon.
Ooh, I like your thinking.
That's why you keep me around.
My number 9 is Ave Caesar. Now, Ave Caesar, which originally came out in 1989, has been reprinted several times. I don't know the last time it was reprinted. I know there was a futuristic printing of it. Maybe Cafe Games reprint. I don't know. It's a racing game. It's a lot of fun. I don't know why it's not currently in print. This seems like one that I would recommend to companies who pick up older games and reprint them with updated rules. However, those companies that have done such a thing have just come out with also a really good racing game that I don't know that I need Ave Caesar anymore. So that's what I'm blaming. And in all honesty, I think that is one of the reasons it's not in print. Because while it's a really fun racing game, why am I not thinking of the name of the other game?
Downforce?
Downforce. I think Downforce kind of fits that niche pretty well. So that I don't know.
And you don't have to yell Ave Caesar when you play it.
But you can if you want to, though.
You can. You'll confuse everyone.
Well, I shot something about Super Mario because we replaced all the cars with Mario. But yes. So Ave Caesar. That was a really long roundabout way.
Yes.
Number 8.
My number 8 is Reifenbreite, the German bicycle racing game where you play as a squad of cyclists and you're trying to work your way through winding tracks. It was very popular in Germany, but there was never an English language edition. I think what's holding this any sort of reprint back is simply because it is so ubiquitous in Germany. It was a German design. If you visit any of the used game shops at Spiel, it's everywhere. If you're in Germany and you want a copy of this game, that's easy to get. In the U.S., it's a little harder to acquire, but it would be cool to see this show up as like a Tour de France game or just any other bicycle racing game with the same mechanics of Reifenbreite, my number 8.
I think the reason this one is not in print is just the fact that it's so easily acquirable outside of America. Now, inside America, it's not. But again, I think it's that Downforce. I think Downforce just ruined all of the racing games.
Downforce is a scourge on the industry. I see. I think we can get Suzanne to agree on that. I mean, You have no
a three-way
conflict on
agreement.
that one, right, man?
A three-way agreement. That's what we just said.
Moving on, my number 8 is Guardians.
Of the Galaxy.
Tom, you know what I'm talking about with Guardians?
Of the Galaxy?
Nope.
I'm looking now. Are you talking about this weird game from Plaid Hat?
No. So Guardians, I am a child of my gaming life started in the 90s, and I was one of those people that got swept up into every goofy, poorly developed, poorly conceived CCG that came out after Magic the Gathering. I have
about that Guardian?
dozens of them in my basement. And Guardians is a game that deserves another chance. It tried to do something different when everybody else was doing a lot of mimicking of Magic the Gathering and putting on different themes and IPs or whatever. But Guardians went ahead and said, okay, you're going to build your team. We're going to use cards in a different way. We're going to create we're going to create a stronghold. And when you go into battle, you're going to put a team and you're going to move this team under a shield card. And now, granted, combat was a little clunky. It could use maybe a little streamlining. But Guardians did some really fun stuff. It had phenomenal art. And that holds up today. Like, you can look at some of these old games and they do not hold up visually. And it was so much fun. And I'm really, really sad that it's not still kind of in the popular discussion around CCGs and whatnot. Guardians, I'd love to see it come back.
There is absolutely nothing I can say about your choice because of foreshadowing. Well, you picked the 1995 CCG, I believe. All right. My number 8 is Faces. Now, this one irritates me because I like Faces. It's a fun party game.
Yep.
And I actively tried to get it reprinted to the point where I had a phone conversation with the designers of this game.
Yeah.
And it just never worked out. I don't even know. I can't even give you a good reason why. This was from Buffalo Games. They had done it. I don't know who has the rights now. I just love this game. I have a custom one that I have at conventions that we bring out and play, but this needs to be reprinted. It's a fun party game. It's simple. Now, I know that Apples to Apples made an Apples to Apples People, I think. So that may be... That was one of the reasons I think that it never got republished, but...
Yeah, plus any published version would pale in comparison to your custom version.
Oh, no. I had an idea on how to do that.
Oh.
I had an idea.
Okay.
But, yeah, what do you do? You know, there isn't any mega party game like that. Like, well, I guess there is. The Super Fight has that. I was about to say, there's how many party games have, a gazillion things they come with. But anyway, Faces, my number 8.
Number 7.
Number 7 for me is the light pusher luck dice game Escape. I talked about this
Good
on the
choice.
show not too long ago. When it showed up, we had a couple over and we pulled it out as something to try, and it went over so well. And I was lamenting the fact that you can't find this in print. And actually, if you go to the Escape page on Board Game Geek, there's like a post from 5 years ago going, why isn't this been reprinted? It is a lovely little pusher luck game with custom dice, plays up to 6 players. It's a Reiner Knizia pusher luck. Escape. It should be somewhere. My number 7.
I agree, Eric. Good choice.
Woo.
I got to play this for the first time at Dice Tower West, and I loved it. And it's one of those situations where you play a game, you love it, you go online to order it right away, only to find out,
Yeah,
you can't get it. So, I feel this one. My number 7 is Perry Rodan, which, Eric, do you know the full name of this game? I just realized I didn't write the full title.
Perry Rodan, the Cosmic League.
I knew I could count on you for this one because Perry Rodan, the Cosmic League, is part of the Cosmos 2-player line of games, which is a line of games I overall just love. And Perry Rodan is a pick up and deliver 2-player game that works so well. I think it's a fabulous 2-player pick up and deliver, another fabulous Cosmos 2-player game, and it is gone, gone, gone. I suspect because apparently, and I had no idea, Perry Rodan is a comic book or something.
Yeah.
It's like a comic character.
It's an IP game.
Right. So it's a licensed game. So I suspect this one is kaput. But I sure do wish it would come back because it's a great one.
It is a great one. This I think I left off because of that IP exception that Tom was talking about earlier. But it is a great game, and it would be nice to see at least the mechanics show up again.
Yeah, I'm glad that the two of you like this game, but I'm going to argue very strongly against that. It's a great game. I would argue pretty strongly against the fact that maybe we shouldn't even be calling it a good game and or game.
Wow.
No, I'm just kidding. It's not. No, it's not. That's fine.
That went far.
Somebody's been drinking the sassy juice.
The sassy juice. I like that.
The fog. Okay, no, it's fine. I just don't think it's that great. I think it's just fine. My number 7 is Forbidden Stars. Forbidden Stars, the big giant, essentially, I could have said StarCraft here. There's a lot of similarities between them. Forbidden Stars, though, is that game I can guarantee this one's not going to be remade since Games Workshop and Fantasy Flight had a breakup right after it was published.
Yeah.
So we won't see expansions for it. We won't see it again unless somehow Games Workshop manages to get the rights for the game design, which I doubt. But if they did, they could reprint it. Or maybe Fantasy Flight will reprint it under a different IP, but I doubt it.
You don't
That's
think they'd ever
Forbidden
make
Stars.
up and have a relationship again?
I don't think so. I think Fantasy Flight is big enough now. I still think Fantasy Flight's the one who left Games Workshop, not the other way around. Because they were making miniatures games and stuff, and that competes directly with Games Workshop.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm just speculating. But either way, Forbidden Stars, how sad. We won't see it again.
Number 6.
My number 6 is going to show up on somebody else's list, so I'll just I'll wait for my Kickstarter to arrive. It should be here any minute.
Ouch. My number 6.
Mean.
That is mean, actually.
My number 6 might align with Eric's number 6. But
It might.
it's higher on somebody else's list, so I will just follow and let them lead.
Alef, my number 6 has nothing to do with either of these people, but it's also higher on Eric's list, which is really weird that it's that high on his list. I'm not even going to make a funny pun. That just amazes me.
Number 5.
My number 5 is going to show up on somebody else's list, and it's super weird that it's that high on... No, actually, I totally
It's not
understand
weird at all.
why it's on. Anyway, it's going to show up later, and he should talk about it because he's got way more plastic bits than I do.
And my number 5 is higher on somebody else's list, so I'll just have to climb up the board and hope to meet at the top.
All right, we're going to talk about games now. My number 5 is Clue the Museum Caper. What a great game. It is so fun. This is not anything like Clue. One person is a thief running into Mr. Body's mansion and stealing art pictures secretly while everyone else is trying to find them. Now, it could use a revamping, and this is definitely one of my restoration games needs to remake this game because I like it so very much. But Clue the Museum Caper is like a mini Scotland Yard with amazing 3D pieces. I love it, and I would love to see it be reprinted. But it is a throwaway game that Hasbro has from Clue. I just don't see them redoing it. But hey, you never know.
I really, really enjoy this one as well. So let me ask you this, Tom. Is it as much fun without the Clue theme?
Yeah, I don't care about the Clue theme at all.
Well, there you go.
It's just a fun game about running around and stealing the paintings.
Yeah, it's super good.
I mean, ever since Tom started talking about this, it's been on my want list, but I've never had a chance to play it. In fact, I've never seen it in person.
I believe it's in the Dice Tower library.
Well, next time you let me see the library, I'll give it a look.
Now I'm sad.
Number 4.
Number 4 is Maharaja, Palace Building in India. It's a game about...
Error.
But error? It's a lovely game. It uses these action dials to determine what you're going to do on your turn. Everyone simultaneously reveals. They're moving around the board and building palaces in these different areas. It's an area control game. You can put little outposts on the tracks between the different cities. It's a cool game, and one that deserves to be seen again. Maharaja, Palace Building in India, number 4.
That's not why I said error. I said error because this was just kickstarted and is delivering in May 2021 by Cranio Creations.
Wait, what?
Oh.
Did you back it, Eric?
I did not.
Well, too bad you missed it. Must not have been that big on your list there, huh?
Oh, my goodness. All right, fine. I'll stick a different one on there.
No, it's too late.
No,
it's recorded.
It's illegal. I'm gonna take I'm gonna go right in the middle between your number 5 and Tom's number 3. I'm in it. I picked something. It's gonna show up later on Tom's list.
I like Maharaja a lot too, and I also didn't know about the reprint. So, oy. But my number 4, this is a callus on my shelf at this point. It's
a bad thing.
It's Urbian. So Urbian is one of the solo or 2-player cooperative games in the Oniverse line. And I was actually so lucky that a Dice Tower fan helped me get a copy of Urbian years ago. And I love it. It's so solid. It's one of the lighter ones. And I think that's one of the things I really enjoy about it. It's a little more rules light. It's a little more relaxing for me to play than some of the other Oniverse titles, which I love many of them. Not all, but many of them. But Urbian is just, if you manage to have the older edition, it's just in like a simple card box, like 6 Nymphed or No Thanks or something like that. Whereas then the rest of the Oniverse line are in these big, beautiful square boxes with just beautiful production value and everything like that. And then there's like this little, it sticks out like a sore thumb in my Oniverse collection, and that makes me sad.
So
but
it's
it
a
also
storage
makes
problem.
me sad that it's out of print and that people don't get to play this, especially people who discovered the Oniverse line in later games, because Urbian is a really good one, and I really hope somehow it gets made again.
I don't care if it ever gets made. But hey, hooray!
I'm glad you like it. I don't.
Just oozing empathy.
I'm here to just rain on praise. But here's a 3-way crossover. This was both of their number 6s. My number 4, Glory to Rome. Now, this one falls in the cracks of just an incredibly unfortunate situation. Glory to Rome, very popular game. It was a slow burn when it first came out. Wasn't super popular. From Cambridge Games, partially because a lot of people didn't like the art. Mm-hmm. But then was remade in a black box edition. However, the person who made it decided to, against advice, do free shipping on the Kickstarter, including international shipping. If you've never run a Kickstarter, that's akin to shooting yourself in the foot. He went bankrupt, went out of business. Some of the copies got sent out. Not all of them did. There are still people waiting for copies of this Glory to Rome. The designer, Carl Chuddick, is pretty disgusted with the whole thing. And I don't know who has the rights to this game, but it's kind of in limbo. Carl Chuddick then went and redid, what's the game he did that kind of replaces this?
Matainai?
I don't know that it does, but it's Matainai. Yeah.
But yeah, that's what everyone says.
No, I'm saying it's kind of. It's not. I think Matainai is garbage. But Glory to Rome. But for some people that scratches the same itch, and I think for Carl Chuddick, that gave him that outlet to do that again. There's also a dinosaur version of the game that Yellow did too. Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to see this one again, but it's a good game. You never know, though.
Yeah.
This was on both y'all's list too, right?
Oh,
It
yeah.
was. It's I think more because it's a Grail game than anything else. It is one of those that is the exception. That even though it's a good game, there are just forces that are probably going to keep this unavailable for the foreseeable future.
And it's a shame. Now, for Tom, you don't like Motainai. Have you played Import Export from Jordan Draper Games?
Yes.
Oh, and you didn't like that one either?
I didn't. The problem is that I'm going to always compare these games to Glory to Rome.
Yeah.
And Import Export felt restrictive, and it didn't feel as good. I like the theme of it actually a lot. I love the idea of those crates, but it just felt like a lesser Glory to Rome.
Alas, that's why it's on all of our lists. It's just that good.
Number 3.
Number 3 is Cathedral, the Richard Breese game about you're sort of building a bunch of farms and putting out your workers to take resources from those farms and building the cathedral. It has a lot of neat mechanisms and it. The map building is very cool in this one. I heard somewhere as I was researching this list that Richard Breese doesn't really like to reprint his games, and this is one of those that once that print run ran out, that's it. He has not decided to bring it back. But I think Cathedral would be enjoyed by a whole new group of people if it came out again. Number 3, Cathedral.
This was close to making my list.
There were another edition. There was more than just the original R&D edition of Cathedral. There was, I think, somebody reprinted it, but it was pretty close to the original release, and then that one went away as well, and that was it.
My number 3 is Mondo. Mondo is a Michael Schacht game, and it's a timed tile laying game where you are racing to place all these different tiles out into your little player board, and when the time runs out, you're just going to be counting animals and completed environments. Imagine tiles with different, grass or water or fields on them, and you're going to lose points for bad stuff, and it's just fun. It is such a great little tile laying game that feels really flexible and interesting, and I'm actually still searching for the expansion myself on this one, but Mondo is a great tile laying game, and I don't know where it is.
I sometimes wonder if I'm the only person who doesn't like this game. Everyone else really likes it, so I'll just say you're right.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Good answer. Good answer.
I'm learning. All right, my number 3, such an obvious choice. This is the one that people always bring up to me, and that is Star Wars Queen's Gambit. Great game, beautiful plastic pieces, but that movie came out 20 years ago. Hasbro does not make games for old movies unless they have some sort of reason to do so. So that perfect situation where they had just bought Avalon Hill, decided to make a pretty good gamers game with great pieces based on a movie that at the time people tended to like. Mm-hmm. And I just read it somewhere where I saw a Star Trek fan arguing with a Star Wars fan and saying Star Wars was like, ours is better than yours. Star Trek's like, yeah, but you don't like 6 out of your 9 movies.
It's funny because it's true.
It is.
It is. But anyway, whether you like episode 1 or not, this game is fantastic. And it's also extremely expensive on eBay right now, but it's not going to be reprinted. It's not. This is one I feel like I can just say it's not going to be one, but I wish it would be.
Yeah. I mean, this one falls under the IP situation. It just because it is so tied to the IP. And we did see a similar game in Star Wars Risk that used some of the similar mechanisms, but it was a much more simplified game. And
Right.
it didn't have... It had some cool ships and stuff, but not the bling and epic skyscraper nature of Queen's Gambit. It's why it was my number 4 the whole time.
Smooth.
Number 2.
Number 2 is another Richard Breese game. That's Reef Encounter. This is another one that got a reprinting soon after the R&D edition. Z-Man had its own edition with new art very quickly after this, but then both versions faded away. Reef Encounter is about growing coral, protecting that coral, then eating the coral, and messing with the hierarchy of the coral to score points for your parrotfish who has eaten the coral. And it's a heavy one. It is certainly not one that. This is another one, kind of like we were talking about with Food Chain Magnet. That a player who knows what they're doing is going to usually win against brand new players. You just sort of need to see how things work before you try and jump into the reef in Reef Encounter number 2.
Man, you could have just did a whole list of Richard Breese games.
I could have. I didn't.
I mean, I could have done a whole list of Cosmos 2-player games then, I think.
Yep.
Because my number 2 is Starship Catan. Which, it's interesting that they put the Catan name on it because any linkage to Catan feels very loose at best to me. But Starship Catan is a 2-player game. Players get their own little spaceship, and you can add rockets on it that can adjust your die rolls, and you can get little blasters that can fight away pirates, and you're going through these decks of cards that are planets that you can explore, and you can get resources from them. If you have a shuttle, you can permanently grab that card, so you have that ability on an ongoing basis, and ultimately you're trying to get all these planets together so that you can win the game. It's incredibly fun. The form factor is kind of interesting because it actually looks like a little flat spaceship, and when you get more rockets, you actually add this little rocket piece that puzzle fits into the back of your ship and that kind of thing.
Yep.
And it's just a fun game. I guess Catan, because there's some resources and there's some resource exchanges and stuff like that, but this is one I do not own. I have almost pushed the button on secondary market multiple times and just have pulled back every time. But I really, really love Starship Catan, and I really want a copy of it. So I hope somebody makes it happen.
That would be nice. Did Catan Studios? I mean, I guess I have to wonder who owns this. This is a Klaus Teuber design, right? Or was it somebody else?
Okay, so this was re-implemented in 2014 as Northwind.
What?
From Z-Man Games. Yeah, see, most people don't know this. So Northwind came out in 2014, so it's still out of print. Northwind is a pirate-themed game, and it played with multiple players, so it was more than 2. So if it helps at all, I rank Starship Catan an 8, and I rank Northwind a 7.5. I don't think it's as good. It's a little bit lengthier. I'm not sure I like it with more than 2.
Right.
Although many of the mechanisms are the same, and it has some cool 3-dimensional pirate ships in it.
Huh.
So that's from Z-Man / Cosmos. So there's, I guess, a chance, but I think it sold so poorly that I don't know that you'll see it again. But they did redo Starfarers at Catan. So
Yeah.
That's right. There's always hope.
there's always hope. That's what this list is.
It's
A
hope.
list of hope. My number 2, and this is why I didn't make fun of Guardians from Suzanne, is Overpower, another 1995 CCG, which I have recently just started playing again, and I love it. 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 Yes, it has its problems. Yes, it has its warts. But a reprint fixing some of those warts would be amazing. We all know it will never happen since we have Fantasy Flight is sitting on that license right now, and also Upper Deck has the license. So we got a deck building game, and we have a cooperative game. Yeah, it's not going to happen. But man, I wish it would. I love Overpower.
See, that's the thing. People forget. We can laugh about all these dead CCGs and whatnot, but there were some really solid kernels and a lot of fun. I mean, I had a lot of fun back then playing these games. They're worth looking
I
at.
still have fun with them now. My problem, and I'm going off a tangent here, my problem is it's just so disappointing to some degree. Like, I know that, Suzanne, you agree with me on this one, that we both like the Transformers collectible card game that came out, right?
Oh, heck yeah.
Super fun, But I don't know how you felt, but I knew going into it, I was like, I need to not get too caught up in this because I know they're going to cancel
Not
it.
gonna
Yeah.
It's
last.
going to happen.
Yeah.
And they did.
And they did.
And that's fine because I went into it knowing that way, but it's still kind of a bummer.
Yeah. On the other hand, it's like binge watching a series after it's done, right?
You
Then
know it's over. Yeah.
It's over. You know you have everything and you can optimize around it. So there's pros and cons.
And finally, number 1.
My number 1, which made Tom's list whilst he was making fun of it, well, I don't understand that, is Pueblo. This is the
I couldn't think of
spatial
anything
game.
to say, Eric.
The spatial game where you are trying to build this communal structure with the different colored pieces, but you don't want your pieces to be visible because there's a little overseer that moves around the board, and he will give you negative points if he can see your pieces. So you have both your color pieces and neutral pieces that you're trying to build around to best shield your pieces from the view of the overseer. The reason why it's my number 1 is that this feels to me like this should be one of those evergreen titles that can be recommended to lots of different players. What's a cool spatial game with puzzle pieces I could do? Pueblo. This should be one of those that's readily available. And it's for some reason not. And I just don't understand. Pueblo, my number 1.
Yeah, I agree. Good choice. I think maybe it's the cost of the plastic.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, that does get some games sometimes.
Yeah, but there's so many games with plastic and with high production value nowadays. That doesn't feel like it would be that big of a blocker.
But a lot of those high production value games are Kickstarters and $100 plus games. So, I think it's a price point thing. It's not necessarily that you can't make it, but that you can't make it for the price that like the original was made for, since plastic is so much more expensive now.
Fair enough. And my number 1 is it's actually a game I've talked about a couple of times on the podcast because it's made tops lists or it's made game pie lists for me, and that is Quantum. Quantum is I guess, area control game in which 6-sided dice are used as your ships. And as your ships get bigger, they have different abilities and you can knock each other back. And the boards are all variable because the planets are on tiles. And it's a great game. It's a fabulous game. It uses dice in a very, very fun way. And I'll be honest, I didn't know this was out of print, but I was on social media. I kind of broadcast, hey, what are some games that are out of print that you wish you could have? And somebody said Quantum. And I went, Quantum's out of print? And sure enough, it is. And that is a darn shame because it is a fabulous, fabulous game. And I think it fits really well. It's not that old, but I think it fits really well still. It feels great to play still, and it would find a market still today.
Quantum had gigantic dice, translucent plastic in very bright colors. I wonder if those were very expensive to produce. I think I had one of the early copies of Quantum, and there was some sort of production error with the dice. They came out like gummy and weird.
Right. Yep,
and
I
I
had
wonder
that too.
if that was a hit because they had to basically reproduce all those dice. And I wonder if that was enough to sort of have them shelve it.
I suspect they overprint it. I saw that game at Toys R Us.
Oh, really?
I saw it at Walmart. That's a lot of copies out in the wild. And when you flood the market like that, it's hard you're not going to reprint it because if someone can find a game of it for cheap online,
true,
they're not going to buy it.
Sure, but that was then. And today, people are
actually,
looking for copies.
Well, I'm curious, like on Board Game Geek. You're right. Wow, the prices have gone. I should have went to Toys R Us and cleaned them out.
Yeah. Missed opportunity.
I could have made like $5. Buying and reselling board games is such a terrible thing because of the shipping involved, and the packaging and everything else. I just had someone offer to do something. They're like, "You could send me some board games." I was like, "How about cash? It's so much easier." All right, my number 1, HeroScape. Not even a question. Number 1 by a mile. HeroScape, 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 HeroScape. It was Eric's number 5, but he doesn't love it as much as I do. HeroScape, amazing. I just don't think this one's possible. The plastic's too expensive. I could see something like this being done as a Kickstarter.
Sure.
But I don't even know if the Kickstarter could be effective because they were painted miniatures. Not well painted, but they were painted.
Sure.
There was a ton of them. There was a ton of plastic terrain. This would be like a $300 Kickstarter, and HeroScape cost $35.
Well, I mean, there was the base set.
Yes, but I'm saying that base set wouldn't sell for $35. Have you seen how much Hasbro's selling Hero Quest for?
Yes. But maybe they're testing the waters. Maybe after this Hero Quest thing works out.
I swear, if they do this, I will bite my tongue on this Hero Quest thing. But if they do the same nonsense with HeroScape, we will have words.
Okay.
I will put on my mask and I will picket the Hasbro offices myself, doing absolutely no good and wasting money. All right, fine. Eric got me all irritated for no reason. All right.
Sure.
Eric, why did you do that, Eric?
I didn't know I was pushing that button.
All right, People's Choice. People have asked us to go beyond the top 10, so we're starting to do that. Here we go.
Whoa.
But we'll have to go through pretty quickly. Number 20, Zaya. He's going to reprint it, folks. Don't worry about it. Number 19, Battlelore 2nd Edition. I just keep holding out hope every year, folks, that they redo this one in it, like maybe Star Wars or something. Number 18, Shadows over Camelot. That will probably happen, I think. It sells really well for Days of Wonder. 17, Tannhauser. Not worth your time. 16. Sam Healy's going to come and whop me. 16, StarCraft. I agree. StarCraft is cool, but that one probably won't come back. 15, Libertalia. That's a good one. I wonder if that one will be reprinted at some point. That sounds like a Kickstarter reprint sometime. 14, Hero Quest. Well, that one is the one that came out this week.
Yep.
So there you go. 13, Carcassonne the Castle.
Oh.
The 2-player one from Knizia.
Huh.
This I only disagree with that one because as soon as I played Carcassonne the City, I never played Carcassonne the Castle again.
Yeah, I think I had a similar reaction.
12, Middle Earth Quest. I don't think there's enough demand for that one. Who wants to play the characters you never read about in the books? 11, Carcassonne the City. So there you go, Suzanne. Almost made the top 10. 10, Boring.
Hey, now.
All right.
You're an all-star.
Bora.
Eric.
Number 9 is Seventh Continent. This one I find weird. I guess it's because they won't print anymore, but you never know. And honestly, they're doing Seventh Citadel is on Kickstarter right now.
Right.
And it looks like it's almost the same game.
Didn't they just do like the pared down version? I thought that was maybe just a year ago that there was the basic version. Or like the smaller.
I can't see them leaving money on the table. Yeah. If there's enough demand, they'll reprint it again. Number 8, HeroScape, of course. Number 7, Forbidden Stars. Number 6, Turnin' Taxis.
Wow.
This one surprised me.
I mean, it's a lovely game, but I didn't think it would be that high on the list.
I agree. Number 5, Magic Realm. I would argue very strongly this does not fall under the great game category. I know a lot of people love it, but has anyone here read the rule book and stayed awake?
But it's probably
really
one
old game.
that will not see the light of day.
I know that Mr. Bonnecker, when he was working with Stronghold Games, attempted to do so.
Yeah.
Oh.
It did not work out.
Yeah.
So who knows? Number 4, Chaos in the Old World. This one falls under the same thing as Forbidden Stars. The cooperation between Games Workshop and Fantasy Flight is over, so probably not. 3, Battlestar Galactica. This is one I'm sure a lot of people will be annoyed that none of us put on our list. It just didn't make my top 10, that's all. This one might be reprinted someday.
Maybe. Well, I guess isn't there a new Galactica series being produced, so that might be an opportunity to resurrect the mechanisms.
Interesting. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Number 2, Star Wars Queen's Gambit, and number 1, By a Mile, Glory to Rome.
Yes.
4-way crossover. Whew, that was a long top 10. We better get going here, folks, but we still got more shows coming your way over the course of this year. Next week, you'll hear from Mandy and Suzanne, and we'll just keep putting stuff out for y'all to listen to on your non-transits.
Non-transits as I commute to the other end of my house.
It's funny. I'll be driving, and I'll listen to a podcast for like 6 minutes. Then I get to where I'm going. I'm like, I guess I better listen to this at home. I'm never going to finish it otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. My backlog is large these days.
Well, until next time, I'm Tom Vasel.
I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 677, was recorded on September 24th, 2020. Mandy and Suzanne join you next week, and in 2 weeks, Tom and I tenaciously tally our top 10 games that start with the letter T. Support for this podcast comes from listeners like you. Thank you for spreading the word. And speaking of support, the Jack Vasel Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. Find out more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvasel.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and Eric, with production assistance from Roy Kennedy, Mike DeLisio, and Rob Siri. Our theme was composed by Timothy Pinkham. That time Wolverine and the Hulk got really angry about tilting, brought to you by Supers Kill Pinball. And you can get the latest on everything Dice Tower at Dicetower.com. We love feedback. Visit the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com. Email us at Tom@Dicetower.com, Suzanne at Dicetower.com, or Eric at Dicetower.com, or follow us on Facebook. And of course, you can find more from the Dice Tower Network, including Board Games Insider, Out of Game, The Broken Meeple, The Game Pit, Rolling Dice and Taking Names, The D6 Generation, Ludology, and Board Game Breakfast at DicetowerNetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. A quick update, by the way, I still haven't finished, so I know you were waiting.
Eric, I'm just going to lie and tell him I won. And so then he has to play.
That could work. How's he going to check on us?
He'd never know.
What are we talking about?